What's going on, everybody? My name is Ben and welcome back to the bench for a brand new episode of our AJ-1 Savage here on Military Mondays. Thank you so much, guys, for joining us. Today we're going to go ahead and move on with this build, and so far the kit is coming together well. Last time we worked on the wheelbase, we actually added in a lot of our wires and a couple of tubes and hoses and whatnot, making it look a little bit more lived in, and I'm actually pretty happy with how that turned out. And I want to do something similar to the fuselage for the cockpit, radio operator, all that good stuff, all the internals. I want to do a little bit more work, kind of like these wheelbases, and get everything nicely wired up and add in some detail. So we're going to go ahead and jump right on in here, grab our instructions, and I'm going to start out with the cockpit. We're going to start building up all the sub-assemblies like the seats, the different bulkheads, some of the equipment, and I do plan on using some photo etch for different parts and pieces here in the cockpit and in the radio operator's position, but I'm not going to use all of them. And here's my thoughts on this. I want to use photo etch on areas that will actually benefit from the photo etch. Some of the areas like the side consoles, they have really nice molded in 3D details, and I don't really want to erase all of that to put a flat piece of metal on there. But like areas where you would see directly down through the cockpit, like the instrument panels, center console, seat belts, I'm going to go ahead and use a photo etch. So I think the first thing we have to do is jump in there, build up the cockpit, get all the different areas and positions ready to go, build up those sub-assemblies, and we'll see how it all goes together. And that should give us a better idea of how the photo etch is going to work. So let's go ahead and jump into our first time lapse. Let's start building us up a cockpit. All right, everybody, so we are back, and so far so good. I like how this is coming together. We've got all the sub-assemblies built up. We have all the basic instrument panel layouts, side console, center console, radio equipment, different boxes and whatnot. All the parts and pieces have decent fit. There's a couple of areas you got to be real careful with how the parts go together, but a little bit of cleanup, you're good to go. And I've been looking at our references, and there's a lot of missing wires, details that I would really like to add in. So I think that's what we're going to go ahead and do. We're going to start spicing it up a little bit by adding in some wires, some solder, as well as some strips of styrene, just to go ahead and add in a bit more detail. For example, one of the areas I would really like to go ahead and add more detail is the radio position. There should be a bit more of a shelf-like feel to the radio equipment, and so what we're going to go ahead and do is take some strips of styrene and we're going to cut them to act as supports for the radio equipment. Again, I'm going off of my references and I'm trying to copy as much as I can from those and kind of translate that over to plastic. And then of course, shrink it down to 1/72nd scale, which is never really easy, but we're going to see what we can do. We do have some very nice supports given to us here in the kit, but we don't have a base to those. So I'm just going to go ahead and add one. So once I have that strip of styrene nicely cut into shape, we're going to go ahead and glue it down to the undersurface of the radio equipment. And once that's dry, we'll come back, we'll trim it up, and I think we'll be good to go. Again, there's nothing really major here. We have awesome looking detail. I just want to go ahead and spice it up a little bit more. And I do plan on keeping that door open. So I want to add in even more in terms of wires and special details and whatnot, just to go ahead and give it something interesting to look into, because it's going to be pretty visible. So I think now the only thing left to do is start doing some detailing. And this is going to be interesting because the area that I'm going to be detailing has a lot of wires and a lot of pipes and different details we just don't have in the kit. So that's what we're going to do next. And I've got different diameters of wire. We've got some solder ready to go, my typical 0.3 and 0.33, as well as some very thin magnet wire. And we're actually going to twist the magnet wire together, acting as like a braided cable. And then we're going to separate the ends of them to individual wires because these are very tiny. And I think they fit better with the scale. So let's go ahead and just start twisting up some wires. Let's grab some super glue. Let's grab our flesh cuts, tweezers, X-Acto knives, whatever we need. Let's go ahead and get this going, start detailing up the radio operator section and see what we can do. Let's keep on going. All right, everybody. So we are back, and I've added in as many wires and extra placards and all sorts of detail there in the radio area, and I think we are looking decent. I'm going to go ahead and call that one good. I think there's a nice fine line between too much detail and too little detail. I think I've got it right there in the middle, so I'm happy with it. So now we're going to move our attention over to the cockpit, and we're going to start adding in wires and details there for the pilot as well as the navigator. My references do show bundles of wires that go into the side consoles. I don't see much in terms of wires draped across the floor or tucked into anywhere except for the sidewalls. So that's what we're going to go ahead and try to reproduce. So we're going to start working on the side consoles for the pilot first. We're going to add in the plastic part that we have here in the kit. We could remove all the detail and add in our photo etch, but I kind of like the look of the 3D details. So we're going to hold on to that for now. I can always come back later and add them in after I paint, depending on how we do. For the navigator section, I'll do the same, adding in a little bit more in terms of wire, but there's also missing detail over there, so if I can add in a bit more, I will. So let's go ahead and jump back into the time lapse. Let's detail up our cockpit, see how we do. All right, we are back, and I have done as much wiring as I possibly can do. We've added in details there to all the different areas. I like how it looks. I think it's pretty decent, especially for the scale. And using my references here, you can see just how busy this area is. We've got wires, we've got different stringers and cables, and even more pronounced details. It'll be impossible to capture all of that, but what I have done, I think, a bit more artistically speaking, captures the vibe that we've got going on here. Same thing for the navigator section. You'll notice a couple missing details, but we can add those in. I'll talk about that a little bit later. And then the pilot side, of course, as well, with switches, panels, and wires. We have our seats all built up, and they plug right into the different openings. So one right here, and of course the other side as well. I'll have to glue them back just a tiny bit so they look a bit more natural, but I think that's a decent place to start. We also have our bulkhead here with the chair built in for our radio operator. That drops into place. That was a little tricky to get in there, but we got it. We figured it out. And you can see with the close-up here, we've added in some extra wires and some tiny strips of styrene here and there. I will say that I think this entry point is actually a bit too narrow. I think that means that this should be wider, as well as the floor should be narrower and the stairs should be wider as well. So I don't know how that works out, but you can see the details plugged into the side consoles on both sides. I will use the photo etch for different panels, especially for the seat belts. That's really going to add a lot of detail in there. But everything else, I think we'll use what we want. We'll save the other stuff for other panels and other different types of builds. We have our instrument panels up here in the front. Needs a bit more detail on that, but I think overall it's looking pretty decent. You'll notice I did add one strip of styrene, and I did that because I want to keep these 3D controls. They look really nice, so that is awesome. But regarding the size of the cockpit, I think it's a little bit too narrow because we can drop the seat in there, and one of the escape methods here was actually to drop the seat all the way back down the stairs as a slide. So it should tip all the way back and then kind of hang there. It doesn't fit. So I think the doorway is a bit too narrow and the floor is also a bit too wide. I think if we were able to pull the floor in a little bit, widen up that door, extend the stairs, we would have it a bit more accurate, but this is fine. I'm not going to worry too much about it. It looks the part. It looks good enough. We just want to go ahead and use what parts we had, and I think it looks pretty decent. If I build another one, I might change it up a bit, but for right now, we're good. We're going to move on. You'll see the side walls here. I did add in as many wires as I could, again using my references and a bit of artistic license, pulling in that detail. I've got some braided wire here and there, different side panels and switches and whatnot. We've got some wires hanging around. I try to add in, like I said, as realistically as possible. We don't have this section right here represented in any of our books or pictures, so we don't really know what it looks like. But I try to add in what I could, and you will see a lot of those sidewalls because it's a very big opening, so you see a lot of detail. Same thing goes with the radio operator's position. We have a lot of wires. I spent most of my time here. Try to busy it up a little bit, just like what we have in our references. We've got some plastic card we added in for our photo etch sections that we'll go ahead and mount to that. All these little switches and panels, which we'll have to detail paint up. They'll be black, I believe. And then the bulkhead will drop here and you'll see nothing behind it because it's all closed up. Same thing with the pilot side. We added in some wires and we tried to give it a little bit more braided effect. Also wire coming out the front there. I don't know what they do, but they are in the references, so we decided to add them in. And then when we drop our floor in here, and you can kind of get an idea of what you see, you do see a lot of detail in there. So I wanted to make sure we had enough that kind of catches your eye, livens it up a little bit, you know? Not that the kit is terrible. It's got a lot of detail there for its size, but I just wanted to go ahead and add in a bit more, as I typically do, and I think this fits the bill nicely. I did notice a few missing details, such as this little box at the bottom of the radio operator position. I don't know what it does, but if we look at our references, which by the way, I love this book. It's a fantastic book. If we go ahead and open up to page 24, we can see there's a box at the bottom of this right here on the floor. I don't know what it is, but we needed to add it in because it's quite prominent here in the picture, so that's what I did. Is it correct? Probably not, but hey, you know what? Artistically speaking, it looks more the part, so I'm happy with it. Plus I added in some wires, strung in some other filaments and whatnot. You'll see that we've got this little structural detailing right there, and I actually added those in with some plastic card. And then we added in some other holes and whatnot for different parts that we see here for the seat. So again, lots of work, but I think it's worth it. Just to give you an idea about what you can see and how much detail is noticeable, let's go ahead and just kind of loose fit the parts in here for the cockpit floor and of course for the radio operator, drop in that bulkhead right there. And you can get an idea about just how much detail you will see. Go ahead and plug in the other side of the fuselage very carefully and check it out. You will see that you do have a lot of open space in there. You'll see the seats in quite good detail. You'll see the instrument panels. You'll see the different instruments. You'll see the side consoles. And if we leave the door open here for the radio compartment, when you look through that door, you'll see a lot of the parts, the pieces, the wires, the detail. Hence why I wanted to add more wires, a little bit more effort in there because you will see a lot more than I anticipated. So I think that's pretty cool. Plus, because the cockpit is so open, you'll see right down through the canopy into that radio compartment. And again, I wanted something to look at to get a bit more detail in there to really liven it up. Now, who knows if that's correct, but it is what it is, and we're going to move on. But that is it for us today, guys. We are good to go. Episode 3 is in the bag. We've added in a ton of wires and details. We tried to detail it up just a little bit. We, of course, have our photo etch, which we'll use next episode. But I didn't want to go ahead and install them just yet because I want to go ahead and prime and paint. And I want to go ahead and prime and paint everything at one time because it's just easier that way. I did pick up this Vallejo color here. This is a light green, the exact color they call out for here in the instructions. Who knows if it's correct, but we're going to go with it. And I think next episode we'll be back and we're going to go ahead and prime everything up, paint everything, do some detail painting, and get this thing hopefully all buttoned up. So until then, guys, thank you so much for watching. Hope you guys had a good time on this video. Until our next episode, you know the drill. Go out there, get yourself some bench time, have some fun, build something cool, and we'll see you back here on the next episode of our AJ-1 Savage here on Military Mondays. Thanks for watching, everybody. Take care of yourselves, and we'll see you soon.